me, George.
Coach. Next.
Let's go around and identify ourselves in the record. Pete, we'll start with you.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Ellie Bridges.
Weldon, Timsky.
Good training.
Melinda Freeman, Department of Health and Human Services.
Chief Tolley, Police Department.
Kevin Stoner's Office of Emergency Management.
Dennis LeBlanc, Anchorage Fire Department.
Andy Honest, Municipal Clerk's Office.
You're welcome. Let's see, old business there is, now new business, Alaska Mountain Rescue Group. Eric Huffman, let's see. Is anybody here from Alaska Mountain Rescue Group?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
So I'm Eric. Do you mind if I stand?
No, go ahead, stand or say whatever you want to do.
My name's Eric Huffman. I'm the chairman of the Alaska Mountain Rescue Group. I have some information here that I can give everyone afterwards, or when appropriate. But basically, if you haven't heard of us, we are the search and rescue organization that serves South Central Alaska. We're the only South Central Alaska certified mountain rescue association. We've been in Alaska since 1960, so we're one of the oldest search and rescue organizations in the country. We're a nonprofit, fully volunteer organization. We have seen quite the growth in missions and capability within our organization over the last 5 to 10 years. Some of the challenges we have is more people are able to get in the backcountry, which is great, but we require more training to make sure that when the call comes, we can answer. We are able to sustain self-sufficiency in the field for at least 72 hours. We operate under DPS, specifically AST. So when AST gets a search and rescue call in South Central, they call us. Most of our missions reside within the Anchorage municipality, so anywhere from Eagle River down to Kirkwood. We also go all over the state when required as well too. Because we are Mountain Rescue Association certified and NASAR certified, both national organizations, we bring to the table specific skill sets that are hard to come by within the main part of Alaska. The other group is in Juneau Mountain Rescue in Sitka. So our training is very, very important because from a technical rescue standpoint, it is a low need. When I say low need, several times a year, but a very, very high risk. You have lives basically dangling at the end of a rope, typically 2 rescuers and a subject. And so we train a lot on that. We also have some members that's been with the organization for 20, 30 years that are getting a little up in age and would like to train up some younger folk and retire. So we are also doing more recruiting. Since I've been the chairman of the last 3 years, we've grown the organization in members, and part of that recruitment is for technical rescue. It's one of our strategic goals because we can't lose that knowledge that we currently have in our organization. And so that's some of the challenges we have is on the training piece. And so what we're looking at right now is we actually operate, our main training facility is a small area upstairs of a DOT maintenance building. According to the group, that's a step up from where we used to be. I think we used to be in a rescue connex at one stage. So we have moved up. However, due to the additional members that we've acquired over the last couple of years, this facility is no longer being able to hold our trainings properly. It's also limiting our public outreach. One of the things we want to do is actually do a much better job of public outreach and education. And unfortunately, that facility does not allow us to, it technically allows us, but it does not efficiently allow us to bring in public to do training in the backcountry. And this includes, we do technical rescue, but we also do search and rescue, a lot of avalanche responses, and one of the things that we do that most of the government entities, including the PJs, don't do typically is recovery of deceased individuals. So one of the things we proud ourselves is we will return your loved ones no matter what. And so the training is what helps save lives, both our lives and the lives of our community. And so what I've come to discuss here today is how can we improve our training facility. So we have several different ideas, but what we really want to do is look to the assembly to help build a partnership on what those ideas could actually be. Our current facility is probably less than 1,000 square feet. That includes all of our gear storage. Unfortunately, our gear is, most of our communications gear is temperature sensitive, so we cannot store it out in our rescue trailer or in our rescue vehicle. So for every mission and most trainings, somebody has to go upstairs, a flight of stairs, and collect all this gear down. For missions, that's time consuming, and when you're talking about missions, time is of the essence, especially on avalanches and searches. So what we would like to do is see if there's a facility that maybe we could look to the assembly to partner with, either in part or whole, to better support our training and where we actually store our gear. So some of the ideas that some of our members have thrown out is something similar to a fire station. A fire station is not in use anymore. The reason is because it has a garage space and typically has some type of conference room similar to this, even if it's smaller, but similar to this where we can do not only our classroom training, which we do an extensive amount, but also something we can invite the public into to hold training events as well too. So.
Well, let me, first I want to recognize Horst Dunbar joining the secretary of the meeting. Welcome, Forrest. Question from assembly members. Yes, Mr.
Don't we
Steele.
have a couple of fire stations that we're talking about doing something with?
Chief?
7-1 has been sold, and Old Station 9 has been sold. It closes March 20th.
To be reused, or are they going to be?
Station 7-1 was sold to it's going to be used as a private residence. And Old Station 9 has been purchased by the bike shop. And it'll be turned into a commercial bicycle retail. And that went for $1.2 million.
Well, I'm sure it was within their budget.
Yeah. So what's interesting about Alaska Mountain Rescue Group is we actually have a very, very tiny budget. Unfortunately, even our own members are buying their own gear. The places in the lower 48, those search and rescue organizations get a substantial support from the counties. So our budget is,
Minuscule.
yeah, probably Starbucks coffee for some folks per year.
Mr. Peterson and then Mr. Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're using Fire Station 3 to store old engines in. Is there any room left besides what we're storing there?
The one on Airport Heights, the USAR team has remained on the first floor, and then the second floor is now what we call the top shop, because our maintenance facility was built in 1981 and half the apparatus we have now. The 3 bays on the street side are being used for the maintenance shop.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Mr. Wellington, sir.
Couple of things. So you're using 1,000 square feet now, but how much would you like off?
I think probably if we had a classroom, the size of this or half of this, so probably about, I don't know, this is probably about 600 or 800 square foot per classroom. And then the other idea would be the garage space to put in an enclosed trailer. Through fundraising last year, we were able to purchase an enclosed trailer that we use not only for snow machines. That actually came about because of the lack of helicopter support from AST. But we also use that as an instant command post. But also, classrooms like this size or half the size, during missions we can use as an instant command post as well too for research missions. The technical rescue team suggested that if there was an overhang, so like a 2-story, but an overhang inside, they could actually build an anchor system there. So the technical rescue team would be able to train indoors as well.
So more than 1,000 square feet?
Total probably, yes, sir.
So I think we had some email exchanges somewhere.
Yes.
Like that boat, like Mayo's got a huge amount of space that they need sometimes, but not all the time. Did you talk to Barbara about that? Or is that just-
No. I'm sorry, where was that at?
That's,
It's
before this
on
one,
Ship
like
Creek.
to go. It's a Ship Creek
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay.
It's a huge space.
Yeah.
But when they're needed, they need it all, right? And when they don't, there's some, so it wouldn't be always available.
security of our, equipment. One of the reasons we decided we wanted to rent that space, so we wouldn't have to move our equipment around all over the place, so we put it in there and we leave it there. I don't know if the clerk's office would be very crazy about, sharing that space, to be totally
It says
honest.
they're not having the grill until tomorrow, I think. I'm not sure. Administration, you heard what they need. Is there anything you guys know? Police, emergency services, is there anything we can do to help them? Yes, Chief.
Mr. Chair, the police department would always welcome outside groups such as that into the training academy if the time would be available, time slots would be available. So, particular dates and things like that, there's a possibility. If I was looking for space like this, I'd be going to real estate services and seeing what is available municipality-wide, as well as I have been told that the state crime lab is very much underutilized, and there's a lot of empty space there. And since they're affiliated through the state, and that's how they, you use them, you contact the state, and we work through the state to then ask for their assistance and so on, then maybe the state will be a good place to house it in some of their empty space. Just a suggestion.
We can check with real estate services and see, you said if there's something they've got. You can check with the state, because the crime lab, we've heard that it's not being utilized, he's correct. Maybe there's something they can do there to help.
Great idea.
We'll get back in touch with you once we talk to the city real estate people.
Okay,
If
thanks.
they know what's available, we help.
Okay, great.
But thank you very much for being here.
Thanks everybody for your time.
One more
Mr.
suggestion.
Steele?
Have you tried the base? I mean,
No, we have not.
There's a air guard operation there.
Yep.
And sometimes they have facilities that might be available. Now, there's an access issue, but
Right.
you can work those kinds of things out. I was thinking a rock gym would be perfect in terms of, something you could do that, that's on there. Rock gyms that I know are probably still in operation.
Mr. Dunbar is a resident guard expert.
Yeah, I know, I'm certainly, my drill weekend starts on Saturday, so I'm certainly willing to talk to people who come in, and I think that it's not usually practical to have civilians co-located on bases because of the access issue you're talking about, but in your case, you work pretty close with the air guard. right?
210 to 212, yeah.
Yeah,
It may work out.
with the Blackhawks. So, have you had a chance to speak with real estate services yet?
No.
Okay, so like they said, like that, and Mike Abbott, I mean, he's not here today, but the city manager has a pretty good idea kind of what is available where, he has an overall view of it. I think anyone on this committee, but I don't think myself and John in particular, that you talked to by email, we're going to be able to talk to Mike with you before you if you desire, so.
Okay.
What's a good number for you?
Area code 937-631-0512.
We'll see what we can find, and Forrest can get hold of you, and make planning with the guard.
Okay.
But thanks for being here.
Thank you all for your time. I
Appreciate
know
what
it's,
you do, because when people are stranded in the backcountry, you're the only rescue. So we appreciate what you do to save lives.
Yeah, thank you.
And with those state cutbacks,
Yeah.
I'm sure that everybody's going to be suffering.
Well, maybe there's more real estate with
Yeah.
state cutbacks.
Yeah.
And lots of space.
That's kind of how we ended up with the snow machine pool, was not only the state cutbacks, but a couple years ago with the ASD helicopter crash, they no longer fly at night. So now we have to be even more self-sufficient for longer. One of the missions we actually were stranded on Mount Peak because they can fly at night. So those are things that we want to train for.
So they can't fly the helicopters at night either?
I'm sorry?
The state can't fly the helicopters at night?
The state cannot, the guard can if they have the flight time. So that mission, we actually had to utilize a life med. They typically don't do transports, but they can fly at night, and they were willing to because a teenager had a broken femur. So they wanted to get him off that mountain. So,
Well, thanks so much for talking to us.
thank you all for your time, appreciate it.
sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Next is Al Millspaw. Al, how can we help you?
Well, I'm with the University of Hercules Hospital Vice President, and what I'm looking at is an endorsement to get park rangers. brought the idea on. In December of last year, during the assembly meeting, it was brought, the idea was brought up. And it was mentioned that possibly because of funding, future budget money could be found for that. The amount of money I heard was $254,000 for 8 part-time rangers. So why do we need rangers? Well, right now, there's been a lot of crime going on. There's been rapes, there's been robberies, there's been people murdered. We all know about all these problems that have been happening. As a prior commissioner of the Animal Control Advisory Board, I'm also aware of what complaints the Animal Control is getting from people with loose dogs, dogs attacking people, the bike trail, dogs approaching them, and dogs pooping all over the place too, and people not maintaining it. So I think the idea is great, and the concept I have is that we have probably a part-time park rangers, what we'll call them, and they'd be out there with some kind of uniform and be employee of the city, and they wouldn't. My concept that they wouldn't have any enforcement authority, but they'd be there at the visibility, like the city of, what do you call it, assembly, the people walk around the middle of Midtown. Ambassadors, yeah, the ambassadors. There'd be the same concept as those, where the visibility, I believe, would cut down a lot of the misuse of dogs, uncontrolled dogs, and people who want to commit a crime, they probably think twice about it, because these people would be there, and if they saw something going on, maybe dogs or doing something else, they could approach them and let them know what the laws, the regulations are. And if they got a negative response or they felt the need, they could call the proper authorities and let the authorities go from there. So that's my concept, and I'm asking your endorsement to the assembly for the idea in the future that we can get these guys on board.
Mr. Peterson, as a resident expert on these park rangers, you brought it forward the last time to the assembly. Remember the budget hearings? You wanted money for it.
Yeah.
Where were you envisioning?
Well,
Al got it from you.
Yeah, I
So,
know. And it sounded like a good idea. We just sort of got a little bit of a late start, because we pretty much already had our budget finished when I brought that up. So, I don't know whether we are gonna make adjustments in the first quarter budget situation. This might be something we might consider, depending on the availability of revenue.
How much money were you talking about in your envision? Just maybe-
About quarter million, it would be eight park rangers for a summer program.
Other assembly members? Mr. Woodman, sir?
So we had a volunteer trail watch effort for a while. That's still going on.
Yeah,
Would that be exactly what you have here, the enforcement powers is out there visible?
well, I don't believe they have uniforms. I don't
Yes.
think they're part of the city. I think it's about, totally volunteer. I'm not really sure, but I'm not involved in that. But they do all the trails. I don't know how much of the park area they do, so I'm not really an expert on that.
And if I can.
Yes, ma'am.
The Trail Watch is all volunteers. It's not, we're sending 3 people to this park or this trail at a time. And so there's some, if no one's out there, no one's out there. And they don't have vests anymore. They just have armbands, so a little bit less visible. I think Parks is trying to get them vests again, and we're trying to work with them to kind of reinvigorate that program, but it would be a little different. It's all depending on where people are.
Mr. Wilson, anything else, sir?
No, thank you.
Okay, assembly members? Yes, B.
Just another little bit more information. The plan would be that the park rangers would be assigned specific parks, and they would be patrolling those parks regularly, so eventually there'd be similar to community policing, where they would recognize the people from the neighborhood who were using the park, quite often, and then if they saw someone that looked unusual or they didn't recognize them, that would maybe get their attention, because they could be able to monitor them, see if there was something that they were planning to do that was detrimental to the park.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for presenting out. Dick and I have my community council who decided to go into community council, getting them to support a resolution for this, for the park rangers. And it's a really, really great idea, and something I'm really, really working for. But, of course, money is an issue, and we already have heard that there's going to be a budget shortfall for 2018. So, I just wanted to throw that out there, you know, maybe things will change, you know, but that's the scenario that we have before us right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilson.
So Chief Tully, is this, would this lift some burden off the police if there were 8 people patrolling the parks, then you wouldn't have to?
The police department is always so grateful for community members to engage and help, and we definitely need the help of the community. I don't know specifically what you have in mind for park rangers. I don't know if that would be part of Parks and Recs, part of code enforcement, part of Health and Human Services, or in fact, it was police department. If it was police department, of course, I'd be evaluating it, you know, that is represented positions and so on, and those considerations would have to be evaluated, and could quite possibly come under that umbrella should they be housed with the police department. But the department's always grateful for any kind of eyes and ears and awareness within our community.
Thanks.
Anything else from Sunday members? I think Pete's right, though, as we look towards Swiss Growth Reservations, money's gonna be tight, we're gonna have to wait and see if we can afford it. I mean, just, now things have gotten very tight, and I don't see them getting any better, but what I see coming out of June is gonna be worse than it is now. Take a look at it.
If I can add, I've also presented before the Federation Committee Council. And there are other committee councils who are interested. Matter of fact, I'm going to a meeting tomorrow night, I'll be turning in to talk about this. But there is a lot of other interest in the other committee councils too. And also, I want to thank the chief because he came to committee council, the Federation Committee Council last month and talked about bond issues and did a great job, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Howard, do you guys have a committee council tonight?
Tonight, yep.
First Wednesday of the month. Thank you. Well, let's move on to Chief Tully. Chief?
Yes, I want to report to the Public Safety Committee, our staffing and so on. Our Class 16-1, which was the Academy class graduating December of 2016, they're in the field training phase of their training. One has completed the process early. This particular individual was an officer from out of state who had over 20 years of service, graduated as a valedictorian of the class, and he finished it up very, very quickly. The others, we anticipate, the other 24 should finish the program beginning mid-April, and some will drag into May. So we're very excited about that. Additionally, we've recently had 3 lateral officers graduate from the field training program in the last 2 months. Each one of these laterals have just been a good gain for the department. Class 16-2, which started in December of 2016, last week it was their midterm week, and the group of 29 recruits are halfway done. This week they're doing bonding overwatch, which is firing guns and moving at the same time, ambush attacks, crime scene processing, introduction of patrol rifles, and wellness training. The next academy, which is scheduled to begin in 17-1, posting closed February 15th. Recruitment is going well, and it's an ongoing endeavor. We currently, we've been hitting a lot of events, such as Martin Luther King celebration, the Alaska Boat Show, UAA Career Fair, Cabela's Guns and Hoses, and we have several more on the calendar to include a career fair with ASD, the Spring Fling for Women, Great Alaskan Aviation Gathering, Sportsman Show, and so on. Employees Relations has referred 525 applicants. We're currently working on the academy starting June 19th, and we're optimistic that we'll be able to fill that academy.
How many slots are in the academy?
A full academy would be 28. The past couple academies, we've tried to go just a little above that. That's problematic to some degree, but we're going to try to get in as many as we can.
Some many sworn officers are badge carrying right now, Jim?
We're at 405 right now.
405?
And roughly 52 of them are in some phase of training.
Do we have any projected retirements?
As many as 95 people could retire this year
95.
or eligible. Our best, evaluating the last 5-year trends and looking at the best models and so on, we think that we'll end up probably somewhere in the mid-20s, maybe even high 20s, that we could lose. But it's very, just don't know.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, sir.
So June 19th will be 17-1, is that right?
Correct.
And then when is 17-2 proposed to start?
December of 2017. The lateral officer postings, and that's for APSC certified officers in Alaska, was reopened on February 2nd and will remain open for a couple of months. And sometime between the May-July employee relations will reopen the application process for the 17-2 class, which is the December class.
And, sorry, I got to follow. So how many laterals do we want or do we anticipate in 17? And how many academy members do we want or anticipate in 17-2?
The administration's goal is to have 56 new officers in 2017. And however we get to that, as well as we are hoping to get some laterals. We picked up 6 laterals from 16, some of them just now finishing up. And we hope to get some. We don't anticipate it being as high a number as it was in the past, unless there will be some type of layoffs or something like that for the troopers.
Mr. Steele, sir.
Yeah, the pools, I would suspect you've been looking for some time now. The pool might be getting a little bit smaller, but is our Alaska residents a priority for you, or have you built that pool pretty well?
Yes, sir. So you're right. The number of people applied for the previous academies have gotten down below that 500 mark. We're not done yet. We're already over 500. But the last 2 academy classes, we had close to 1,000 applicants. So we do see a reduction. So out of that 900 and some applicants, we ended up with the class of 29, for example.
When
So-
things are tough, I presume you have a better chance of recruiting people. When jobs are hard to find. Military, is that a good source for you?
All those avenues, we try hard to recruit both in-state and out-of-state, military, prior law enforcement. We put a lot of effort into each and every one of those areas, as well as we have previously mentioned, partnered with ASD. And for those individuals that making it a family affair, so to speak, we look for jobs wherever it may be for whatever family member. Like I said in our previously reported to you, our last academy class had a father and son, which we're very happy about that.
Do you still, are the folks that began the walking shifts downtown, are they still doing that, or is that still a regular assignment?
Yes, sir, that has been.
Do you rotate people through it, or is it those people that are assigned to it?
It's a desirable assignment, which we're very happy to hear, and we try to pick those that are most enthusiastic and that will get the most benefit from.
Sure got some good press for starting, I thought, in terms of the response that the businesses have to it.
Yes, sir, and we hope to provide more and more good news from that and continue the success of
Have
that.
you seen a reduction in crime downtown?
I have not seen the latest reports for this quarter, because the quarter's not over yet in that area, but we do monitor that, and it's something we'll be looking closely at come mid-April when all the information's in.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunbar, sir.
Tim covered.
Is there a question, Ms. Summey-Vickers?
So I just had a few more
Go ahead, Chief.
pieces to give you on the non-sworn side of the house, because we've been putting a lot of emphasis into that EMT, we have 1 vacancy, and there's going to be 2 coming down the pike, so a total of 3 positions. And they're scheduled for testing this coming Monday, March 6th. Evidence technician, we have 1 vacancy, and they're scheduled for testing this coming Monday. A lab clerk, it's in classification with ER opinion review, so we're working closely with ER on that. The audiovisual technician, same thing. It has been fully vetted through ER, and it should be posted today, possibly today. Records clerks, we just recently hired 3 new records clerks, which will start on Monday, and then we're looking for 4 additional applicants, and we've already done all the interviews and so on. It's in backgrounds. Community service officer, CSO, oral boards are scheduled for early April. In dispatch, we're down 1 call taker, 1 dispatcher, and a clerk 3. All those postings are in progress. And then, so that means in the next few months, we're hoping to fill these 17 positions by the summer.
Mr. Wilson,
You know, we're looking at the scrap metal and precious metals law. Is that, would that, should that pass, would that increase, would you need more people to manage that? You're getting, every week you get 4 records from the scrap metal and precious metal people.
I would have to research that for you, Mr. Arlington. I'm sorry, I just don't know off the top of my head exactly what the latest is on that. I know it's something that's been about, we're waiting for quite some time, and I don't actually know the impact workload on the department. If it is looked at as a time saver, or if it will take additional hours. I can get back to you on that if you like.
That'd be interesting to know.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you got 17, what you calling non-sworn positions that you're trying to fill?
Non-officers.
And so you're not recruiting to fill these positions from people who are already on the force? You're recruiting for the general public, is that?
The vast majority. Sometimes they're open to employees within the department if it's a promotion or whatever. For example, the CSO position, you may see somebody else in a different position in the department wanting that very desirable job, which would create a vacancy for that.
I see.
But the vast majority of these individuals are from the outside.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any questions from assembly members? Chief, if there's anything we can do to help you, Mark, let us know. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
If there's any legislation we need to pass, just let us know. How's the morale of the police department doing now?
I think everybody's in really good spirits, and that's what's very encouraging. People who were talking about leaving as soon as they had eligibility are no longer saying that. There's some individuals that, have their life planned out in different blocks of time and so on, but we're really pleased in that we were able to retain more people last year, and I attribute much of that to the morale within the department, and I think that morale is continuing today.
If there's anything we can do, let us know, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Moving on, I don't see a Chief Enforcement Officer here from Code Enforcement. So we'll move down to the Fire Chief.
Good
Chief, how you
morning.
doing?
Last month, we reviewed the statistics for 2016, so I don't have a handout today. Just mention a few things, like the police department, Anchorage Fire Department is in the midst of setting up to run an academy. Over the past 16 days, 260 people tested initially with the written. We advanced 176 to the physical agility test. From that, 141 went into what we call structured orals with battalion chiefs, and 63 were advanced to chiefs interviews. Myself and 3 others interviewed 63 folks over 7 days, and we're positioned after we do the background checks and the psych evaluations to advance conditional offers for 30 people. Of course, most of that academy will be dependent upon the voters' reaction to the 2 bond proposals that the fire department has, and specifically the area-wide EMS bond that proposes to add 2 additional MICUs, as well as add $2.3 million in annual operating and maintenance expense for the salaries of those 14 academy for 2017 and look for 2018 opportunity. But the voters have been very, very kind and appreciative of the fire department, with generally a 62-64 favorable vote. So we remain optimistic. But great young kids. We actually had one candidate, it was his 5th time applying. And most of them say even if they don't make it this time, they'll be back again next year. So I think the public safety departments, as well as health and human services in Anchorage, have great reputation both within the state and outside of the state. Of course, since the last time we met, we've had a couple of significant tragic incidences. The 3811 Minnesota apartment fire was a tragic event. 3 fatalities. Of that, of course, 16 total sent to hospitals. The ATF was on scene for about 11 days, working cooperatively with APD and AFD, and that investigation continues. Great cooperation there. Of course, we had the tragic death on Shoshone Drive due to the carbon monoxide poisoning. 18-year-old senior at South High School. So we're reinitiating our PSAs on having working CO detectors in homes. Regrettably, we don't believe there was a working one in that particular house. So we're working with the Red Cross to as we did in the early 2000s when we had the tragedy with the Arts family in Bear Valley, where all 5 members of that family died because of CO poisoning. So we continue to be very aggressive in getting that word out in the community. And of course, as Fire Marshal Cleo Hill commented in the news the other day, 2 of the deaths in the Minnesota fire involved a person who was non-ambulatory, and her caregiver was the one that died here just the other day down in Washington. But if you do have a person who's non-ambulatory, you want to consider their location. This particular woman was on the 2nd floor and really had no way to escape a fire. And when we were able to get into the room, we weren't able to remove her also. On the good news, working with the Anchorage Police Department over the past year, of course, we have the Alaska chaplaincy program here in Diane Patterson. I think most of you know Diane and her chaplains that serve Anchorage. We've restructured our relationship with that organization. It's very positive, constructive relationship. The fire department has, working with the police department, the fire department has assumed primary responsibility for managing that contract. It's, of course, a no-cost contract to the city. They're having new uniforms, and they'll be dispatched through the Anchorage Fire Department. We do maintain 3 vehicles for their use, and they're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, providing a tremendous service to the community. And that new program actually kicked off today, March 1st. So we're really excited about that. We also initiated our annual car seat inspection. That'll be March 8th, 9th, and 10th at Station 1. We have car seat technicians at most all 13 stations. We require our probationary firefighters to go through that 3.5-day car seat inspection technician training. So we've got a lot out there, but we're going to be doing a focused effort on March 8th through 10th at Station 1. And lastly, the latest addition to the frontline apparatus of the Anchorage Fire Department, which is our new tractor-driven apparatus. It's called the Tiller. That $1.2 million piece of machinery that the voters approved a couple of years ago arrived here in Anchorage last week. It's actually over the radio shop right now, being outfitted with radios. And that provides us complete maneuverability, particularly in the Mountain View area, the Fairview area. There was a lot of traffic calming done fixed fire trucks. They're just too long, they couldn't make the turns. So here, we'll get this tiller, which basically is an articulating piece of machinery, and it's got a 100-foot ladder on it. And it's also the one that has the driver's compartment in the back. We affectionately call it the Kramer-mobile. If anybody watched Seinfeld, you saw Kramer in the back of this apparatus. It's the first one in the state of Alaska, and we'll be conducting training once the ice goes away, and it'll actually be in service probably mid-May, early part of June. But it's a great addition for the city, and we want to thank the voters, obviously, for approving that.
Thank you, Chief. We've got a few questions.
I just want to share one piece of good news. I know you've seen me on the phone here. We've been looking the last 36 hours for this missing 12-year-old.
12-year-old
She's been
girl.
found safe.
Oh,
Good job, Chief. Ms. Ray Jackson, Mr.
Thank
Peters.
you, Mr. Chairman. So, you have somebody who applied for the 5th time? That's pretty impressive. So did they make it this time?
I really can't say.
They're
still in the process.
How does that work? You know, in terms of how many times you can apply and what
You
happens?
can apply until you just don't want to do it anymore. But we
So if you don't
have,
make it the first time, you can just keep applying?
yes, ma'am.
Question on this.
Yep. Many, it's rare that a first-time applicant gets to interview with the chief, because they usually, they thought the civil service exam would be easy, they get knocked out in the written test, or they just weren't as strong as they thought they would be, so they failed in the physical agility test. And then it's interesting, because I did go and I addressed the 300 plus when they were first starting their written test. And I said, if you do make it to structured orals, which is the battalion chiefs and senior captains, or you come to the chief's interview, don't tell us what you think we want to hear. We need to hear from you. We need to hear from you, the individual, because when you get in that trying situation, you're going to react not as the textbook tells you to react. You're going to react to your natural abilities with all of your learning. So a lot of people go into the structured orals and they try to feed back to the graders, the textbook answer, and that typically fails most of them, because anybody can read a book and regurgitate what they've read. We want to know who you are. So a lot of them never ever make it to the chief's interview, and then when we open up the academy again for application, probably 80% of all the applicants have been at least 2, if not 3, some 4, some 5 times.
Well, I'm really glad that they get such a chance. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think I remember Mr. Overman very 20 times past the bar, and I don't think he ever did.
Oh, I think like 30s, I think it was.
It's now 30?
So 30s, yeah.
So I guess we'd have everybody doing 30 times for all right.
Yeah, they'll probably be a little bit old at that point.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this new Kramer fire mobile, is that something you would have used at that Minnesota fire? Would have that helped at all, or?
It wouldn't have had an advantage in that particular fire. One of the challenges that we had is we had a truck basically stranded on Minnesota because the power lines run on the east side, and the power lines were a significant obstacle from the street to the apartment building. We were able to get a ladder truck in on the north side, which fought the fire with ladder operations. But the one that was on Minnesota was challenged because we couldn't raise the ladder because of the power lines. So, another reason why I know the city has been moving to have power lines underground, and that was an example.
Thank you.
As fast as we can. Mr. Steele, sir?
Yeah, that's a valid point about underground utilities. That's a good argument for doing it. Everybody usually uses, they just look better outside. I would think it depends on why they didn't make it, as to whether or not your recruits would think they had a shot. Maybe there were some just a creamer class of candidates, or maybe there's a learning curve in terms of the material. Do they have materials that they can study?
Oh, absolutely, sir. Yes.
So they know what they're facing at that point, they just.
And then in truth, and I can't imagine why, but a lot of those young folks come into the chief's interview, and of course, we're sitting on the other side of the table, and we've got the white shirts and the gold badges, some of us have the silver here, and they just walk up. I mean,
So you're intimidated.
yeah, it's like 1,000-pound yoke on your back, and we try to break the ice and draw them out, but some of them, it's just impossible, and we really never get to know who they are, because they're so nervous. And when they come back the next time, they're less. And
It'd
when
be
they come back
interesting
the
to
first-
track some of those people to see how they do over time, once they do get in and get the job,
We rarely, if ever, lose anyone that gets through the academy. Some physically just can't make it through the academy. In the 14th and 15th, 16th week, they just run out of gas.
Running up down those ladders with hoses and full gear on. It's pretty tough chore as well.
It's not easy.
Any questions from some of the members? Chief, just a couple of things. When we do PSAs on carbon monoxide, you might want to look doing PSAs, telling people to make sure their vents are connected. Because I understand in that one incident, the young man died, the exhaust coming out of the boiler was not connected correctly.
That's correct.
If you can do some sort of PSA, because I don't think many of us go and look in our basement to see, is everything going out the right way? You know, beyond the carbon monoxide detector, they could have caught it had they checked the piping going out. But other thing, Chief, when you talked to us about the Minnesota fire, you said the design of the building was so that you couldn't get out the inside, that you just had to walk out the backside on the stairs.
The building was
And that was
constructed in the
burned.
70s, actually as a hotel.
Okay.
And converted to an apartment building. Two sets of scissor staircases at each end, the east and the west. And you access the apartments by exterior balconies. It didn't have an interior corridor like you would see in most apartment buildings. So when the fire had engulfed the western front end of the apartment building, that staircase became useless, and those apartments that were most to the west side had no access out because the fire was there on the balcony. And that's where the people were jumping from the third and second floor when they were on the most west end of the building. And that's where we had the first victim. She suffered a head injury.
Chief, is that a common design from the 70s?
Yes, sir. In fact, there's a sister building immediately to the south. It's just separated by a small parking lot. And so if you went by Minnesota and you looked at the sister building, you would see this exterior access design.
After this happened, I saw something on TV, they were talking about people getting ladders to put it in their windows so they can get out. Have we ever thought about trying to contact these buildings, at least a public notification, you might want to get this kind of a ladder?
That's an excellent point, Mr. Trainee. In addition to, obviously, a smoke detector alarm, CO detector alarm, if you have sleeping quarters on the second, third floors, you should have what's called the bedroom escape ladders. You bolt them into the studs and you just lay them there, and they stay there forever until the point of time where you need to knock out the window and throw the ladder off the side and then climb down. Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Chief. Appreciate everything you've done. Health Department, ma'am, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So first I want to acknowledge our partners in APD. We have had an unexpected guest at DHHS for actually over the course of several months, a gentleman had stayed overnight one night unexpectedly, discovered by our staff. And that was pretty alarming, and he wanted to make himself at home in addition to that one night. And APD has just been fantastic in addition to our Guardian security team helping us to apprehend the gentleman. He was pretty clever at going into our basement at DHHS, and those of you that have experienced our building, there's a lot of nooks and crannies from it being a hospital. And so we continue to improve our safety at the DHHS building. We had APD come last year to do a whole walkthrough of everything and give suggestions for and recommendations for improved safety. They were very valuable in that area. And then with this unexpected intruder, and it wasn't just that the person wanted to stay there, but he was very aggressive. And so when we intervened with him, it was alarming to the staff. So it was a great deal of work making sure our staff and clients are safe, and APD apprehended the individual. He was arrested and he's trespassed from DHHS. Apparently he stays in a lot of downtown buildings. So I just want to thank Chief Tolley and the wonderful team for their assistance with that. We feel more secure, but you can never be complacent about safety. So I want to bring your attention to several things. One is we've given you the annual overview from the Anchorage Safety Patrol. That's about a 3-page document in addition to our animal control information today. And I wanted to just point out several interesting areas from our report. If you look at page 3, I believe it is, it's the demographics page. And I'd like to point out on the right-hand side at the top of the document where it lists the ages and the top 200 users and the top 50 users. I want to bring your attention to the age category of 30 to 34. You see that we have 334 nights of utilization for that age group. And out of the top 200, 7 people are in the top 50 in the age category of 30 to 34 from staying at the safety center. That's very noteworthy. Over the years, our ages have decreased in the utilization of ASP. So where we used to have, you can see that the age category of 50 to 54, you have utilization of 367 intakes, or 45 out of the top 200. So you have this interesting, unique bell curve where you have the younger people utilizing it in the top 50 folks, and then you have ages 50 to 54. This is what we've been seeing. That's the trend that we've been talking about the last few years, that our high users are getting younger, and the older people are either housed, hopefully, or they passed away from their medical conditions, their addiction, and their homelessness. So something to note there. And as you see from the annual overview, the intakes continue, they're about half of what they used to be now in 2016. So I'll keep you posted on that. And then the other noteworthy update from DHHS is that we did issue, once you pass the human trafficking poster ordinance, we did issue the letter to about 2,700 businesses over the last 3 weeks. And thank you to Assemblyman Weddleton for noticing, significant error in our letter, which stated that it was a $100 a day fine. It's $100 a week. If these posters are not displayed for employees beginning by March 31st. We've had multiple calls. Some were less popular than others in the calls. And what I noticed, and I want you to know as assembly members, is that some of our assisted living home owners were quite offended by being in the same letter as adult establishments, massage parlors, and there was, we didn't have any brilliant order to the in the letter as far as the businesses, but they were offended, and I tried to reduce the negativity about that. We said it's not a reflection of how you're running your business. It's that nationally, some folks who do operate assisted living homes didn't go into that it's typically organized crime. I just talked about that we offer this poster as a way to make sure that their employees are safe and if they need information. So the ones that are running legitimate businesses, we didn't, there were very few calls. And we've clarified questions that community members have had, business owners have had, and then the only place we'll be able to enforce this is when we go in for restaurant inspections. It is required of restaurants to post the poster. So we've been having active participation in that. that was all the news we have at this time. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Dunbar.
Well, this might be more of a question for Mike Abbott or for someone from Real Estate Services, but can you give us an update on your efforts to find a new location, a new building? Is that going forward?
Yes, yes. Oh, thank you for that question. We have a gap a fiscal gap with the development of the project. We're still working on about a $5 million gap between what the developers will gain and all of these very complex development initiatives related to the DHHS building. You know, it's a very large complex that's being developed. We are the first part of this project. The commitment is to have the DHHS building built first, then the developers can develop the current DHHS building site, which is poised to have senior housing and I think retail on the bottom of that. So we are moving forward, Robin in real estate, as well as our other muni partners, Hal Hart, Abul Hassan from transportation. All of these folks, Chris Schutte, have just been fantastic experts in moving this project forward. I just appreciate the question. So we're closer. We still have a gap, but it's not insurmountable. And Robin Ward informed me last night that that will be resolved over time with either lease payments or some kind of arrangement. She's such an expert, and they keep us informed. We did finish the design of the building with the developers. They have several hundred thousands of dollars invested in the architectural and engineering design of the new DHHS building, which is quite a commitment since they aren't reaping any benefits currently from that. And it was just a wonderful collaborative process. We gave them, extensive input on every piece of the design that we need to provide health care for people, and it was very positive. So I feel that we'll have adequate space. We're still pushing for parking of the WOW in warm storage there, but I'm not sure about that.
Mr. Dunbar.
So just to follow up, sorry. So I had heard a rumor, perhaps you guys already announced this and I just missed it, but I heard a rumor about the location, that it would be basically on the border between my district and Mr. Trainey's. Is that official yet, or is that?
That is not the location. It is still evolving, but if you wanted to have further questions that would be probably a little clearer as far as feedback, it would be from Ms. Ward in real estate. Yes, we haven't announced it. That would come from real estate or the muni manager.
Mr. Steele.
We did see last night that she's getting a lot more inventory.
Right.
Yeah, I was interested, that certainly is a prime location that you're going to vacate, not necessarily the building, but.
Right.
But the land spot, and I thought the development that was going down there was going to go in the parking lot, in the back part, but it's going to take up that whole property.
Well, there are several parcels that are in play with the, for the developer. It's the building, the parking space, and then there are adjacent lots that are owned by the muni. And so I think all of that is in play in the development of the project. And of course, these folks are experts, and so that's evolving. I'm not sure regarding the Heritage Land Bank what all of the parcels that are involved. But
I'm almost excited as you must be to finally get a space that's habitable.
it would be fantastic, and the attention that's being paid to public transportation, the staff's needs is just really fantastic.
Now we need a city hall.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, I've got one spot picked out.
I have one too.
I was probably saying more.
Got it. We could say it used to be a school.
Maybe.
Any other questions from the assembly members? Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
Emergency management, sir.
I don't have a lot for today, but probably the most significant thing since last month was we met this morning with the reps, or a rep from the Small Business Administration, SBA, regarding the Royal Oaks fire, or the fire in Minnesota. this is they can provide some level of assistance to individuals. And what they're up here doing now is information gathering and fact finding to see if the incident meets the threshold to qualify. The state is actually the lead agency in this, the State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, so they were at the meeting as well. So they surveyed the site or went to the site with the Fire Marshal's office as well, looked at it. We meet again here at 1:30. And like I say, they're collecting information. A lot of the criteria they would look for are the numbers of people affected. And then once you get numbers and a percentage of the facility that's been, that's not salvageable for whatever the reason, they look at that and then they break that down further into different levels of criteria. And it gets complex. An example would be, 4 people are displaced, but and they're all 4 roommates, and so that counts as 4 people. But if you have a family of 4 living there, that's a different issue. So they have to sort through all that. So right now they're just gathering information and fact finding. The outreach to the individuals is actually done through the Red Cross and then this other agency as well. So we don't have a sense yet of how many people might benefit from this as they go through the criteria. And then it's a voluntary thing. It's primarily low interest types of loans, that sort of a thing. So if you restart your household because you lost everything, you don't have to go out here and make, buy furniture and make high payments, take a loan on furniture and things like this. That's what's intended to. And to cover the gap where insurance doesn't cover is primarily what it does. So there may be a lot of people affected. Some of them may not qualify, others might, and that's what they're sorting through right now. So this is an ongoing process, and like I said, we're just facilitating. The Division of Homeland Security Emergency, or the State's Division is the one who's actually the point of this. We want to know a little bit more here, or a little bit more about what information they need. We'll meet with them again this afternoon. We have our, I want to call it routine training, monthly training. We have some folks coming in. We're training up for our Public Information Center section of the UNC. Some new people in there that are going to learn to be Public Information Center reps. And then we have some other folks recently assigned to the USC that will do their initial orientation training for them. So that'll bring us out to the month. And then we have regular outreach events of one kind or another that come and go, get canceled or whatever. I won't bore you with all those. So it's February is a busy month. March will be another busy month.
Thank you. Question of somebody members? Yes.
What was your involvement on the emergency response?
It's pretty limited. Like I said, we're more a coordination agency. The way it would work is if enough people are displaced and they need a temporary shelter or something like that, coordinated with Red Cross and Parks and Rec to do that. We usually use a rec center for those kinds of numbers. If it's bigger than that, then our job is to get the other agencies involved that might assist or might help.
And you said you don't think everybody has been placed yet in terms of?
No, I don't. They're all in temporary shelters or temporary places. They're not in Spenard Rec. That lasted about a week, I think, or less than a matter of days. And so they were out of there by Friday, that Friday. And so Red Cross works individual cases with them. We don't track the individuals. They're the caseworker for this. There are the component for the city that does that. So, like I said, we don't track the individuals that the Red Cross does, and the reps from the SBA we work with Red Cross reps to reach out and touch those folks who may be affected. And once again, people have to apply. Some people don't for whatever the reason. They don't want to talk to the government for whatever reason.
Thank you.
Other questions from any members? Then Chief, Fire Chief, yesterday we were talking about GNCs. Somebody in the tax cap ministry brought up with that Minnesota fire. that their chips had been, I guess, looked at to see if there's anything that could help taxis coming into that fire. Did you know that, or did you hear that?
No, I haven't heard that.
Well, somebody testified last night that said that with the fire, the taxi cabs chips that record what happens to the cameras have been requested, so I just wondered if that had happened. Sometimes we get told stuff is not quite accurate.
Well, I know the national response team from the ATF spent many hours trying to get every possible video
Maybe they did.
that they could get. The two gas stations located right there, of course, so police dash cams, et cetera.
Mr. Governor.
Just a quick question on that, is for you too, Chief. So is it currently being investigated as an accident or as a crime?
I'm not at liberty to say.
And ATF is the lead agency on
And they haven't said either way, or they just don't share that to the stage, or?
You probably can't tell us right now.
that. There has been some things, I think, in the newspaper
Yeah.
that have become public knowledge, and I don't know exactly what it said, but there were some things put out there publicly.
Need to know.
I'm sorry,
We don't have to need to know, apparently.
That's fine.
Have they released the site for cleanup yet?
It's been turned over to the property owner. It was turned over about a week ago.
So evidence has been collected?
Yes.
So they're,
Oh, I have a question.
I know I drove by there yesterday, and there was a sign up there for lease. I think it's another spot, but you go by the place in Minnesota, and there's this big sign for lease. I don't think that one.
Chief, why do our sushi restaurants keep burning down? What's going on?
So we had another one the other day, didn't we?
Yeah, we got two in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I believe this one was in the kitchen. It's still being investigated too, but I believe that sushi was associated with electrical,
Okay.
whereas the Royal Suite is not electrical.
Mr.
I'm sorry. Are most of the CO2 alarms, are most of those standalones, or are they combined with the fire?
CO alarms.
Heat? So CO and CO. I'm CO and heat. Are they in one unit typically, or do you have separate units?
You can buy them separately, you can buy them all
So,
in.
both ways.
They can be battery operated, they can be electrical, they can be both.
I need to go see what
Years ago, that somebody did pass an ordinance where it was in the Navy, that ended right there in partnership. They had a big fervor with that. Government can't tell us what to do. Yes, in fact, we can and we did.
Yeah, I just wonder why it isn't. Well, I'm sure it is mandatory in the building code. They can put them in new remodels or new construction.
Anyway, if there's nothing else, thanks for being here. This meeting's over with.
Thank you.